Hello there. So, wow, there's a huge earthquake in Japan, very close to where I live. So, I'm going to talk about that. And yeah, I don't know how much Roblox content there's going to be in the coming days. We'll see. I mean, I have a bunch of things I recorded before that I haven't published yet. But they might need editing and stuff that I might not really have time for, but anyway, let's talk about the earthquake. So, in Japan, there's this peninsula right here. I guess it's called the Noto Peninsula. I didn't even know that, to be honest. I'm not sure if the Noto Peninsula is this upper part or if it's the whole thing. I'm not sure. But now Google Maps says here's the earthquake. I think the earthquake was actually... it might have been here. I think it was like 7 kilometers away from Noto. I thought it was like more over here in the ocean, but I'm not sure actually. So either a bit out in the ocean or here. I would guess here, since that's what Google's saying right now. But Wajima City, right here, was very badly hit. They had a huge fire. The death toll is in the 90s now. I think it will be somewhere between 1 to 300 people, somewhere in there. And so I'm in this area around here. This is Ishikawa Prefecture, is going all the way down here. There's these lines. I don't know if you can see it that well in the video, but there's... and actually Himi is a nearby city, and it was hit pretty hard. But the worst hit were Wajima, Noto, this area. There's a city in here called, I think, Suzu. Yeah, Suzu right here was very badly hit. But even in so there's a famous city, Kanazawa. It's over here. Very beautiful area. Tourists come. I was there actually just a couple months ago. My mom came to visit Japan and we went there. And most of the tourists, almost all of them were Japanese, so it's more famous among Japanese people. But it's almost kind of like Kyoto style, Kyoto kind of vibes. But definitely less famous than Kyoto, so if you want to avoid big crowds, I would recommend, but you want something like Kyoto, I would recommend Kanazawa. But anyway, even in Kanazawa, there were houses that were flipped over. And where I am over here is closer to the earthquake. And I didn't see any flipped over houses, but I did see in our local neighborhood quite close is a house that collapsed. I don't think anyone has died in Toyama. I think all the deaths are kind of like north of here, about. Hopefully, I'm not sure exactly, but yeah. Anyway, so some people are probably going to ask me what it was like, what my experience was, so I'll just kind of say that. And but first I'll say the last few days I've been mainly spending most of my energy shoveling sand because the local area got sort of flooded with sand or very sandy soil. But and the work there is still not done, and it's the earthquake was on the 1st and now it's the 5th, and most of that work is done, but there's still a decent amount more. So tomorrow I'll be shoveling sand, maybe the next day. And I also volunteered in Takaoka. There's an official, that's the kind of nearest major city that shows up here, Takaoka. And yeah, I went through the official volunteering system. So they might send me off somewhere to help clean up and stuff like that. But okay, so what happened? Well, so before the big earthquake was about a minute before or so was a smaller earthquake but enough to make me jump up. And my wife and I, we live in a pretty old house here in Japan. It was built by her grandfather and her great-grandfather. So it's an old house made out of wood, and so in a huge earthquake it could collapse. And so we always run out of the house when there's a big earthquake. And about 2 or 3 times a year, I would say, even maybe a little more than that, we run out of the house. There's some earthquake and we run out of the house. Now we have 5 cats. These are really basically my wife's cats more than they're mine, and but I love them too. And sometimes, so she'll start grabbing cats because she wants to put them in the carry case to take with her to the evacuation center if there's a big earthquake. So the first earthquake that happened only lasted, it was decent strength and shaking, but it only lasted a few seconds. And I just sort of copied what my wife was doing, and I grabbed a cat. But then the shaking stopped, and we were sitting in the kitchen, and she was holding 2 cats by their necks, and I was holding one cat. And we're looking at each other, and I thought we should take a walk. That's kind of what I think when something like that happens. Let's go outside, take a walk, in case a big one comes. And I'm like, well, should we go for a walk? And I'm going to try to convince her that we should. And she was like, no, because she's worried about her cats. But I was going to convince her, well, let's put the cats in the carry cases and then at least like hang out outside or something. We'll get ready or something. But like, as we're discussing this, so it was like probably within a minute, the big earthquake came. So as we're discussing this, and she was also saying like, because it was the 1st of January, so she's like, wouldn't that be silly if on the 1st of January a big earthquake comes? Like, what strange timing. And as we're having this conversation, then the big earthquake comes. And so serious shaking. I run out of the house holding one of the cats. Now this is not unusual. This happens from time to time. But when I get outside, I'm in the street and I look over and I see the road being churned up, almost like it's a liquid. Basically, like there's all this pressure of the earth underneath, and underneath the road, I've learned from looking at it that the road, there's like a layer of asphalt that is maybe a little more than half a foot in width. I don't know how many centimeters that is. I don't know, maybe like 10 centimeters or something of asphalt, and below that is a bunch of, I guess, soil, but it's like sand or very sandy soil. And so what's happening is, of course, the earth's shaking, and that sand and that sandy soil underneath the asphalt is moving around like liquid. They call it liquefaction. So it's moving around like liquid underneath, and this is putting all kinds of pressure on the top layer of the road, the asphalt. And so in some places it will rip apart in cracks. Other places it will smash together, and other places it will like twist and churn. And so I looked over and I'm seeing the road like just getting like twisted and crushed together and just getting smashed together. Almost like the surface of a pie. If you kind of like smushed together the surface of a pie, and it's like cracking and coming up. And that's when I realized that this was a serious disaster, because I've never seen anything like that in my life. And so I was standing in the street holding a cat and saying like, holy shit. And I didn't have my phone on me, but I was watching the ground. The shaking was maybe I forget if it was like 30 seconds or a minute, but around there. And I was watching the ground, of course, because things were, of course, it was shaking. It wasn't shaking so hard that I couldn't stand, but there was major shaking, and various parts of the street were cracking and twisting and coming apart and getting smashed together. So I was watching that, but I was also watching the telephone poles and the power lines and all that above me, and I started walking over to position myself where I'm not beneath those. So there's a big temple nearby, and I walked into the driveway of that temple while the last of the shaking ended, still holding the cat, who's starting to freak out a little bit more. I don't know if the cat knew what was going on, but he doesn't like being held like that, especially not outside, which we don't take the cats outside, so it's kind of there. Yeah, he was not happy. But so then what happens? The shaking stops, but water starts pouring up from underneath at a pretty alarming pace, actually. Just water, just like from all the cracks, from the gutters, everything, like just water starts coming up. And I thought, well, we need to get the heck out of here. Because you know how, like, when a tsunami happens, usually the water all gets sucked out, right? But I think that basically that happens, but also water can, well, a lot of complicated things can happen, I think, in an earthquake. And maybe in some areas, water can actually be pushed up, like right away. And that's not the main tsunami. The tsunami is going to come from deeper parts of the ocean as a big wave. But I was researching about it just an hour ago, and confirmed that rising water levels can also be an indicator of a tsunami. Now, of course, I don't need to know. The earthquake itself is plenty of an indicator. And by the way, it was a 7.6 magnitude earthquake, which is pretty big. I think the Tohoku earthquake, which was 2011, I think was about a magnitude 9, if I'm not mistaken. 7.6. So I just thought, okay, seeing all that, first of all, even without the water, we need to get out of there, because we live really close to the ocean, less than 2 meters above sea level where we are. So we need to get the heck out of there. And that's what we did. But I helped my wife put some of the cats in the carry cases, and we ran out of there. It's quite a scene because everyone evacuated. Everyone knows a tsunami might come. Now, in the Sea of Japan, so this is the west side of Japan, there could be a tsunami, and there was a tsunami, not a huge one, but if you were in these areas in the north, were kind of badly hit. But I don't think you will get as big of tsunamis in the Sea of Japan as you will over on the side of the Pacific Ocean. But I'm not an expert, so don't take my word for it. Anyway, so I thought that I needed to get the heck out of there, which we did. We went to an evacuation center, but I thought it's not necessarily high enough. I thought it'd probably be fine. And we looked it up afterwards, and this evacuation center was about 13 meters above sea level. And the tsunami that hit mainly Fukushima and that area in 2011, that was, I think, somewhere between 15 to 19 meters tall, something like that. And where we evacuated was like 13 meters tall. So if you're comparing those tsunamis, then yeah, maybe 13 meters isn't enough. And now again, there's the Japan Sea. It's the Japan Sea instead of the Pacific Ocean. But the other thing you got to keep in mind is I had no idea what the magnitude of the earthquake was. I wasn't going to stop and take out my phone and check, take a minute to check. That minute could be the difference between life and death. But I did feel that where we were, I was probably fine, but I would like to get higher up. And, I talked with my wife, but she wanted to stay with the cats. So I was like, let's just put the cats down somewhere and run. Because the thing is, we're like on a hill, but to get to higher ground, you have to go down into a valley and then back up into higher hills. And so she didn't want to do that. So I said, okay, well, I'm going to run for higher ground. Are you sure? And she said, yeah. So we did that. So I ran. Now, I don't know if there had been a ginormous tsunami along the same size as in the 2011 earthquake. I don't know if I would have survived, because by the time I got to the higher up hills area, I think it was somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes after the earthquake, I think. But I ran my butt off for the hills and constantly looking over towards the ocean, seeing if I would see some kind of wall of water coming. Now, I didn't, again, because it's a Japan sea, I didn't think there'd be a huge tsunami, but I don't really want to play the game of trying to predict how big God makes tsunamis. So, it's like better safe than sorry as much as possible. But anyway, in this area, I don't think there was really a tsunami around this area. If there was, it was quite small. There was a 2 or 3, maybe 4 meter tsunami up in this area, I think. So the tsunami was not really a problem, but I did wait between, 40 minutes or an hour in the hills, then come back. And we stayed the night at the evacuation center, and I think the next day, well, we spent 3 nights in the evacuation center because we're concerned about aftershocks. Even aftershock could come even now while I'm recording this. There's several decent sized aftershocks per day. There were probably 2 or 3 today. And, a bigger aftershock than the quake itself could come. So it's a very high risk period of time right now. And that high risk probably continues for a few weeks, if not 2 or 3 months of sort of high risk of serious earthquakes. And most of the aftershocks are centered up in this area, Ishikawa. This is, like I said before, Ishikawa Prefecture, and here's Toyama Prefecture, where I am. So most of the aftershocks are centered here, and they're usually between the ones that we take note of are usually between magnitude 3 to 5, I think. But so if you're up in this area, that's extremely, it's annoying where I am already, we run out of the house and all that. But up in here is even worse, and certainly there's houses and buildings that have serious damage, and when you have even a minor aftershock can be enough to take a house down if it's already heavily damaged. So it's really sad and horrible for them experiencing all these aftershocks, many per day. This is what always happens with earthquakes. One of the really annoying things, I guess, calling it annoying is maybe an understatement. One of the really annoying things is these aftershocks. Kind of psychologically messes with people and makes it hard to sleep and stuff like this. Last night, I don't know if it was really an earthquake or... because you're dreaming about this stuff. You're dreaming about earthquakes And yeah, so I don't know if it really happened, but I thought there was an earthquake, and we jumped out and ran outside in the middle of the night. But what we do is we have a glass that we've put in some water in a glass, and then we look at that. Because, well, every aftershock that we've run out of the house, except I don't know about the one when in the middle of when we were sleeping, that might have been imagined, but all the rest of them, there's so much obvious shaking going on that we don't bother to look at the glass. But many, many, many times per day, we look at the glass because we, like, even just a strong wind blowing kind of shakes this house a little bit, or when trucks go by, the house shakes a little bit, or all these cats, or some kind of noise will happen. And also, you just have this weird sensation that things are shaking even when they're not. It's weird. But if you're in a big earthquake, I think this is normal. You will randomly think that things are shaking when they're not. And that happens quite a lot. So we use a glass with water. We look at that. But yeah, and so my local area got sort of like very lightly flooded. Some people, their garages got a bit flooded. Some houses, like a normal traditional Japanese house, kind of is raised up a bit for some reason, and ours is like that. So ours is high enough that there's no flooding, but people whose houses are sort of level with the surrounding land, those got a bit flooded by probably a few centimeters of water, very sandy water, which left a layer of sand. And that sand came from underneath all the roads. So, yeah, so we've been... And also all the gutters were completely jammed full of sand. And so we've spent days just digging up sand and piling it up and putting it into bags, and then trucks come and take the bags, or sometimes it's used to repair kind of like for a temporary repair of the street, filling in cracks, that kind of stuff. So that's what we've been doing. That's about it. I could show, I have pictures I took the other day of the local area, but I don't have the energy to look at them, to really edit this video or anything like that. So that's about it. I'm gonna leave it at that for today. So please don't expect anything soon. That's about it. Take care. Bye.